Let's see if we're live on YouTube. As always, let me know where you're from and if you have any questions as I go through my usual lesson here lives on YouTube. I'll do my best to answer those. But make sure first that we're working. Come on, YouTube. All right, I think should be loading in. See if we have people watching here. And of course, we start as usual with a fire truck or something. Well, I am Drew Badger, so we are working now, the English Fluency Guide and the founder of EnglishAnyone.com. Welcome to another live video here on YouTube. Today we're going to talk about something I think should be very helpful for many people, especially those who know a lot of English but have trouble expressing themselves. So we often talk about this on the channel. Pardon me as I fix my mic stand over here. I think we should be all right. One moment. But nice to see everybody here. And we'll get started. Look at that, from Argentina, Brazil. I will keep my eye on comments. As usual, I try to keep the lesson portion of this to the beginning of the video. Hopefully it won't go too long, but if you do have questions, let me know. Today we're going to be talking about what I call chef method. And this, again, should be maybe a clearer way to understand about how to get fluent. So people who struggle to speak, again, I think you will enjoy this. So I was having a conversation with a learner and they were asking me about how to become a more confident, fluent speaker. And I was also explaining to them what I do and how I help people. And they were, it wasn't until I started explaining this idea that it made more sense to them and how they can actually become fluent. So I think maybe this kind of chef method explanation should be easier for people to understand. But as I try to do, I like to give different ways of explaining things so different kinds of people can understand things in different ways. Anyway, I want to talk about, let's see if I get a marker here. So this idea of chef method, I want to begin with just some different kinds of food. So if we imagine, I'm not the greatest drawer here, but let's imagine we've got some chicken. This is like a chicken drumstick or chicken breast or whatever. So we got chicken, and let's say we got some onions. I'd put a little kind of round, kind of looks like an apple or something, but it's supposed to be an onion. So an onion, maybe we have some green peppers. If you can think of some other ingredients, let me know. But again, I'm just trying to think of just some basic things that most people might know about. The pictures will not be that great, but hopefully you will get the idea anyway. So let's take, let's see, some kind of lettuce or something like that, or some noodles. Let's do like some kind of noodles. We'll just imagine these are noodles. And then maybe we take some garlic, like a little bit of spice over here, if that's fitting on there. Whoops, L-I-C, garlic. All right, so we've got chicken, garlic, onion, green peppers, and noodles over here. Now, I am not a chef, and I don't actually know very much about cooking. I'm not really that good of a cook. If I have to make something, I'm okay. I can usually just take different things and put them in a pot or a fry pan or whatever, and start cooking them. So it's not very difficult for me. So when I look at these things, I would probably just combine all of them in a pan or whatever, and maybe fry them up or something. So I look at these things and I don't really see very much. But I want you to imagine maybe you are actually a good chef. You are good at cooking or finding different ways to combine ingredients. But a chef could look at these exact same ingredients and probably create I don't know, 10 different dishes, 20 different dishes out of these things. And so the interesting thing, or the main difference between someone like me and someone like a chef, is they actually know how to take these same things and really do something with them because they know the ingredients really well. All right. So me, I know what these are, I know what they taste like, but I have a very low level of understanding of these ingredients. So I know if you take garlic, I guess you could maybe roast it or heat it up or something. I don't really know much about garlic. I know what the flavor tastes like. I've had garlic before. I've had all of these different foods. So I know what they taste like, but a chef, like a really good chef, is going to know all of these things. Like they could take these and make a hot dish. So they could actually cook these things, or maybe they could make a salad. You could make like onion and green peppers and put them on noodles and have a cold chicken salad. So you could take these different ingredients and combine them in different ways. You could do just maybe taking two of them, some kind of chicken and garlic thing, or chicken and onion, or green peppers and onions, or not using chicken at all. The point is, you can take these exact same ingredients and a chef will look at them in a completely different way. All right. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because when I usually explain this idea to learners, they think about like understanding vocabulary in the same way that I'm trying to talk about explaining or trying to explain, excuse me, different kinds of ingredients. And when like a regular person is trying to think about learning a new language, it's kind of like how I'm learning about food, or my kind of lower level knowledge about food. So I've tried garlic before. I've had it maybe different ways. I don't know how to cook garlic in different ways. But even garlic itself, a chef would know, well, if we cook it to this temperature, maybe we get a slightly different flavor. Or if we crush it up, or if we just add a little bit, or even if we take different pieces of the garlic itself. So maybe you have like the little green, little sprout part that comes over the top, or you take the roots or the inside or something like that. There are lots of different things you could probably do, but I don't know what those are. All right. So the point is, that would be the difference between someone who actually knows a lot about cooking, especially cooking with garlic, versus me, who doesn't. And so when I think about cooking, I look at cooking in the same way that a lot of people are trying to learn languages, especially learning English. And so in my case, when I'm talking to learners, I say, well, basically, how well do you know your ingredients? All right. And by ingredients, I mean the vocabulary, the grammar, all those different things that people think they know. They think they know them. So again, a person who doesn't know about cooking, they probably know what these things are. You could go to a store maybe and buy these things, and maybe you could follow a recipe. All right, so the recipe says, take this chicken and fry this and do this other thing. But if you told that person to just create their own thing, like me, if I had to make my own thing out of these, I would probably not do a very good job. Okay, so I know what these are, but I know what these are to a lower level than like an actual chef would. And so why is this idea important? I like this idea of chef method, thinking about vocabulary and language learning in the same way, is that there are actually different levels of understanding, okay? So I know what an onion is, but I don't really know what an onion is, okay? I know this sounds like kind of a silly idea, but I know what an onion is. At a very basic level. I could find that. If someone showed me a picture of an onion, I could tell what that is. But I wouldn't know what happens to an onion if you cook it. Like, let's say there's a certain degree, you have to cook it this much temperature, like, 90 degrees or something. And if you cook it like 80 or 90 or 100, the flavor actually changes. Now, I don't know that. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe it does. Maybe there's some kind of thing about onions in this way. But the point is, a good chef would. And so if you go to chef school, imagine you start, you want to become a chef, and you go to a chef school and the teacher says, okay, today we're going to learn about onions. And one student raises their hand and they say, oh, well, why am I taking this class? I already know what an onion is. And the teacher says, well, okay, tell me about onions. And the student says, well, it's like a little round thing and you could put it in some salad or something like that. And they would probably give a very low, like not very intelligent way of describing what an onion is compared to a chef. Okay, so a professional, really good chef could probably take an onion and make all kinds of really interesting things out of it that a regular person that doesn't know about cooking would think of. All right. So when I think about explaining vocabulary to people, I want you to think about it in this way if you want to speak. Okay? So when people think, well, I already know that vocabulary, I say, really? How well do you know that vocabulary? Are you actually good? Like, do you really know how to use something? Could you take the same 5 words and create wholly different sentences out of them? Could you take 2 or 3 words and make one thing, or make a joke out of one thing? Could you really use that vocabulary or these ingredients really well? Okay. And so this idea of like people being able to take ingredients and follow recipes, that's one way where if you're trying to learn something, especially learning a language, it's easy to find a recipe for something in a cookbook like a language textbook. And in that way, we would have like this is a particular grammar structure, like vowel and then consonant in this, and we're going to make a word that way, or we're going to take a noun and a verb and an adjective and combine them in this way. But a really good speaker knows how to combine these different things automatically and can make lots of different interesting words and phrases and sentences and stories and all kinds of things. Okay? So I want to remind people that even if you think you know something, if you are not speaking fluently, there's a whole other level, like many other levels really, of understanding that you could get to. And if you think you know something but you actually don't, you are hurting yourself and hurting your ability to speak. Okay? And so I'm going to take this little chef idea. I'm going to have just another way of explaining this. I'll look at chat in just a second. But hopefully this idea is very clear. When I was explaining this to a student, they really got it. They were like, yes, like I can get a translation of this. Like I can learn the word onion, like tamanegi in Japanese. I can learn a different word for that, but that doesn't mean I really know what to do with an onion the same way a chef would. Okay, so I can get the translation of a word also, but I don't really know all the different and various uses of vocabulary and the ways I could use things the way a native would. So if I want to become a fluent speaker, I need to be thinking more like a chef and actually respect the ingredients and learn more about them rather than just try to think, well, I already know that. I know that word. I know that ingredient, that vegetable. Really? And people will often be surprised at what a really good chef can do with something that that person had not thought of before. I remember the first time I had I think different restaurants call this different things, but basically you take an onion and you batter it, like you put some kind of like frying stuff on it, and then you deep fry that and cut it, and so it looks like a big flower. And people call that like a blooming onion or whatever you call that. But I remember the first time I saw that, I said, oh my God, I'd never occurred, that thought had never occurred to me to take an onion and cut it that way and serve that as like a meal for people. And so again, that's me thinking like, well, I know what an onion is. Now, for me personally, I don't claim to know anything about cooking. I can cook a little bit, but I don't know things the way a great chef does. And so I wouldn't tell that chef, well, I know what an onion is. All right. So if I want to become a chef, then I need to be thinking more like a chef, and that the potential of these various ingredients, I could even just focus on these and learn to become a really good chef just by learning a few different things like this. Okay. So what does a typical language learner do? All right. Instead of taking a few things and really understanding them well, what do? They do the opposite. They try to learn, 100 words a day or whatever, how many words it is, but they don't really understand them very well. Okay? They can tell you what they are. They can probably understand them when they hear them in a conversation, but they still don't feel confident about using them. Okay? And so this is where a lot of people get stuck. They understand something to a very low degree, or maybe well enough to understand when people, maybe you hear those things in a movie or something, but you don't have that level, that chef level of knowledge about something where you really feel confident that you'll say it correctly. And that's why a lot of people know a lot of English but struggle to speak. Okay? So hopefully this idea makes sense. I want to continue with this, explain a little bit more, but I want to look at chat just to see if people are getting this idea, or if they're not. Hopefully they are. Let me know, and let me know where you're from, or if you have additional questions that are related to this or not. But in general, when I get questions from learners about how to learn, everything about the language, like your vocabulary or your grammar or your pronunciation, your listening, all of that comes from this idea. And so at the very beginning, if you choose to understand the language the way a chef would understand food, you will become a fluent speaker very quickly. But if you're just thinking about it like a regular person that doesn't know much about cooking, you will probably just learn about more ingredients to a very low level and not really become a very good cook. You could probably follow a recipe if you had one, but again, a good chef can take things and they just know how to deal with them. They can actually, what you might call, cook fluently, all right? So fluently, it just means that they're able to do something without thinking about it, without hesitating or translating, and that's how you can do the same thing. Again, notice we're just talking about a few ingredients. I'm not talking about everything in the kitchen, and I've never been to chef school, but I would imagine they probably learn about simple things first, and they build on that, and they actually learn more and go into more detail about, well, look at that. They're actually different, like layers of heat or whatever that, particular thing is. So people learn how to cook with fire or oil or whatever, and that's how they become more confident speakers. All right, let me look at chat, see if people have any questions about anything, and we'll continue from there. I want to show you exactly how to do this and how you should be learning more like a native, more like a chef would be learning these same things. All right, so Teo says, hello, Georgetown, nice to see you there. Fapple, nice to see you there. Hi, everyone. Hola, greetings from Argentina, says Dario. Patricio from Brazil. And Mao Chang, hello, nice to see you there. Paris, hi. Antonio, hello. My hero from Brazil. Wow, I didn't know I was anybody's hero, but you're welcome. It's my pleasure to have you here. Teo again from Colombia, from Chile, from Morocco. Regards from Mexico. Best regards from Brazil. Somalia. Oh, hi, mada achata. Garizo no chimpo ga mada yatte kita ne. Yabai yo. All right, Patricia says, did you eat cashew? Like ever? Or do you know cashew? Like, do I know what cashews are? Yep, I do. One of my favorite little nuts, actually. I think I have some cashews with me right now. Let's see. Badi says, hello. And Dennis, hello from USA and Kurdistan. Bridget says, Drew, you are a good teacher trying your best for your learner to grasp the understanding. Yes, well, thank you, Bridget. I know what it's like when I don't get something, and I will spend a lot of time personally struggling as I try to learn different things about a language or whatever. Mostly about language stuff that's frustrating for me because I can try to find examples of how to understand something, but often it's very difficult for me to find those. Maybe I'm slow like that. But I know other people can probably be slow like I am, so I really want to make sure people understand what I'm talking about. Patricio says, great class. I am a very good cook. I learned from my grandmother. Glad to hear it. Yes, so a person who is a good cook, a good chef, can look at these ingredients and actually know what to do with them. And they would know how to take like the kind of goal of, okay, we need a salad. Can you produce a salad from these ingredients? Like a really good chef, I could say, hey, can you make a birthday cake? All we have is these ingredients, and they could probably do that, all right? So just like a fluent speaker could take a few words and actually do something with those, create some interesting sentences or stories, a chef could do the same thing. So Richard says, good morning. Sometimes I come across words with the same spelling but different pronunciation. Yes, so there are actually many words like this, and sometimes even the word like read, So the pronunciation can change depending on the context, and this is why it's important to always learn vocabulary in context, which we'll be talking about in just a second. So this could be read or it could be read, depending on what you're talking about. So if it's the past tense, like yesterday, I read a book. And so typically what natives are doing is they're connecting vocabulary with situations, which I'll show you in just a minute. But yes, that's what happens, and that's why it's important to connect the vocabulary or the pronunciation, the grammar, all of those things with certain situations. That way it's much easier to understand when you're learning, and then you can learn to speak fluently. Prasanna says, hi, Drew. Very good morning. Glad to see you. I got up early today to join your lesson. Welcome from Sri Lanka. Fabio, greetings from Malta. Look at that. I think that might be our first person from Malta. Well, that's cool. Paris from Iran, living in Melbourne. Look at people all over the place here. Hello from Kurdistan again. How to understand sentences well. We'll be talking about this a little bit more in this video as well, but the same kind of idea. It all comes from whether you want to understand sentences well or use sentences well. It comes from really understanding the language very well, all right? And by very well, I don't mean like spending a lot of time studying the language. I mean just understanding it well, and you can actually do this very quickly, which I'll show you in a moment. Greek, say hello to you. Georgia, is spaghetti, noodle, or pasta? Well, a noodle just means like a long, kind of thin thing like that. Pasta is just a type of that. So noodle, like you could have noodles that are spaghetti, or noodles that are ramen, or noodles that are, I don't know, linguine, or different kinds of pasta. So there's usually different shapes of pasta, or different thicknesses, or the different material. So maybe rice noodles or wheat or something else you could be using. But it depends on the ingredient. I talked a little bit ago about when we're talking about uncountable and countable nouns. And so you have something like a cup of rice, and a cup of rice, whether it's countable or not, it really just depends on the container the thing is in. So we could have a cup of rice, or a glass of rice, or a bowl of rice, or a rice noodle, if we take the rice and press it into that form, just like water. All right, Bridget says, I was brilliant at maths in school because I was taught the 4 rules and the times tables. I struggled with English. Yeah, it's hard to get the English equivalent of that, of like learning math, because it's much more, when math, you understand a concept very easily, and they build on each other very well. But language, it's a little bit tricky because you can have these different pieces of the language and not learn them in any particular order. It can be very frustrating for people. When I find a new word, I check where and how to use it. At first, I find at least 10 examples with that word, and only after that write it down and try to use it in my speech. Yes, that's a good idea. Again, we want to make ourselves feel confident by knowing that vocabulary very well. And what you're talking about here, this is what I call naturally varied review, where you're getting different examples of the vocabulary and understanding that well. So you understand it much better from many examples rather than just one. It says, big fan of you from Egypt. Nice to see you there. And Hisham says, sorry, I can understand you, but when it comes time to speak, I get stuck. What to do, please tell. Yes, that is what we are talking about in this video. Armando says, are you following the Copa America, which is hosted by the U.S.? I don't know what that is, so I guess not. Franco says, good sharing. Greetings from Indonesia and Paris. If we talk to someone who is the same level as me, or does that help to both sides to improve our English? I probably wouldn't do that. I mean, I don't know. It could hurt you, actually, and it's probably not going to improve your level very much. So I would look for either people who are much better than you, like native speakers if you can find them, or you don't actually need to have a person to speak with. You just get lots of good examples of spoken English, and as you get those different examples, you will naturally feel more confident about using those things. So don't feel like you have to practice speaking in order to become fluent. It's a soccer game. Okay. No idea. I'm not following. I think isn't there a soccer, like a World Cup or something happening right now in Europe, or is that? And the Olympics are happening soon, right? I think. I don't follow any of that. But yeah, I think it's happening. Let me know. I'm sure maybe somebody will talk about Olympic vocabulary or something like that. Sunset says, can you speak Chinese? No, I can kind of pretend like I'm speaking Chinese, but I cannot. I can speak Japanese and English. And Said says, I was trying to find out if the program was difficult for people in Africa. What program? Hi, my great teachers. My first time here. Football. All right. Yes. Well, yes, we call it soccer in the United States because we also have another sport called American football or just football. All right. So let's take a look at this same kind of idea, apply this. I wanted to show you how a chef would actually learn to do something. And I really like the chef example because it's a physical thing that you learn to do, and you typically learn to do it by doing that thing. And so let's look at how language is learned in the same way by native speakers. Now, this is a really fascinating thing. You will probably see this. I wish I had like a video example of this, but it will make sense anyway. I want you to imagine you have a mother. So let's just say a mother and a child. So let's just say a little girl and a little boy over here. Make that little eyes over there. So they are in the kitchen and they are learning to cook, I don't know, some pancakes or something like that. Now, listen carefully to the conversation here. So the mother here has an egg, and she is going to crack the egg and then put the egg into the bowl over here. And so she does that. She's holding on to the egg, and she cracks the egg, and she says, if I write this down here, I broke the egg. So very simple. The children can usually see like it's her talking. I did something. So at this point, when kids are learning to cook, obviously they would know the language pretty well. But this is, again, how they learn subtleties about the language. And I forget who mentioned before about different readings for the same word or different understandings for the same word. But hopefully this should make that a little bit more clear as well. And so the mother has an egg over here, and the kids are just watching here, and she is talking, and she says, I broke the egg. So she breaks the egg open, and the egg falls into the bowl, and they mix it up and make some, pancakes or whatever. So here they have a very simple example of the subject-verb agreement. We make sure we've got I broke, and then what we're talking about breaking. So you can see an actual example over here. I broke the egg. I broke the egg. Now, let's say after that, the mother is holding another egg, and she accidentally drops that egg on the floor. She accidentally drops that egg on the floor. And now in this case, she could say, I broke the egg. But in this case, she actually says, the egg broke. Make sure that can fit over here. So I broke. I broke the egg. And the egg broke. Now, what happens when the kids are watching this and they're hearing these examples and they see the difference? They think, oh, look at that. So even though my mom actually dropped the egg on the ground, she uses, oh, look at that, the intransitive, the egg broke. Like the egg did it by itself. And so the kids are learning a very subtle but important use of the language here, where we can take the same word, but in one way we're talking about someone doing something, and the other way we're talking about it doing something by itself. Okay, so even though the mother was the one who dropped the egg, she said, oh no, the egg broke. And very quickly, kids learn that, oh, look at that. Like when I make a mistake, I can use the language in this way to take some responsibility away from myself. All right, so I broke the egg, or the egg broke. And so they start learning different examples of that. You'll notice the mother is not trying to teach them, hey class, today we're going to talk about transitive and intransitive verbs, and I'm going to give you a bunch of examples. They're actually just learning it very naturally, the same way a chef would learn by doing something, all right? Now, I'm not suggesting you need to be in a family with native speakers, although that's very nice if you can do it. Most people don't have that opportunity, but you have the next best thing, which is to watch lots of examples of natives doing things and actually learning the language that way. And so you learn the language the same way a chef does. We take a word like broke and we understand that it could be transitive or intransitive depending on the situation. And notice I don't really spend much time doing grammar lessons where I talk about the names of verbs or like the kind of verb like transitive versus intransitive or passive versus active, things like that, because you don't need to know that vocabulary in order to speak. The point is really to understand the thing like a native, and that's what's going to get you fluent. Okay? So when people talk about this, the kids, they can then apply this understanding to something else. Like, oh no, I broke the toy. So this is how kids learn language and then begin applying it in different situations. But they're doing it not because they studied it in a textbook, but because they understand the vocabulary well. And they understand the nuance of, oh, look at that. I can make this transitive or intransitive. And it's not about caring about the grammar point. The point is, wait a minute, what do I want to communicate to people? What's really the idea here? The idea is like, oh, it's my fault. I broke the toy. But if the child is trying to say, well, it's not really my fault, I don't know what happened, we would say, the toy broke. Oh no, it broke. Okay? So if we're talking about like a problem with a car or a computer or something like that, typically maybe we did do something to it, but we often begin by saying, oh, well, like the thing just like it broke by itself, you know, like maybe I touched it, but I don't think I did anything. Okay? So all of this, children are learning that just by doing, and really when I say doing, they're actually just getting examples from their mother. Okay? And they're not only getting examples from their mother, they're getting examples from their father or friends or cousins or whatever, school teachers, or actually lots of examples from television or radio or news or books or lots of things like that. And so as you get all of these different examples, it's exactly the same way that a chef would learn, the way a chef is like actually experimenting with different things and learning all of these different ways of using something just by getting these varied examples. Isn't that cool? So I broke the egg. This is just one example. And usually when children are learning the language, this is how they begin to understand the language, because parents are not going to explain, well, this is a transitive verb and this one is intransitive. They're just like, oh, look, the door is open. I open the door. I open the door. Or look at that. It's an automatic door. So the door opens. The door opens. So one of them is transitive. One of them is intransitive, but it doesn't matter. Like, and when I say transitive, it's like you are the one providing some transit or motion, or something else is providing that. So here, like, I broke the toy. I broke the toy. I'm providing the motion for that. So I did that thing. So it's transitive here, but the toy broke is intransitive. It's just doing it by itself. Nothing is causing that thing. It just did it by itself. Okay? But the whole point of understanding a language so you use it is if you understand the language really well, you don't need to think about rules. So children, like most children, most adults could probably not tell you or give you an example of a transitive verb if you asked for one. You could ask an adult native English speaker, you could put a gun to their head and say, give me an example of a transitive verb, and they would say, well, I guess I'll just have to die because I don't know what that means. Okay? And again, they can know how to use a transitive verb or an intransitive verb, but it doesn't matter to them what those names are, because it's not necessary to know that for actual communication. Okay? Hopefully this makes sense. Very important idea about how you should be learning the language too. So if you are doing the opposite, which is learning the traditional English as a second language way, where you begin by like, okay, today we're going to look at transitive verbs and intransitive, and I'm going to give you a list of all these things, and it's probably going to be more difficult for you to remember that and also to use it in a conversation without thinking, okay? But if you learn the language like this, learning English as a first language the same way native children are learning, then it really becomes clear very easily because you can see the connection between the situation and the vocabulary. You understand the vocabulary in context. So if someone asks me, hey, Drew, what does broke mean? I can say, well, it's like something that's getting worse or it's disconnected or something's not working anymore. But you typically learn the vocabulary from a situation. The situation and the vocabulary are connected. So it's very difficult to try to learn just the vocabulary and then come back to situations after that. Okay, does this make sense? Hopefully this does. But again, you can see how this is then applied to other things. So very even young children, they would say, oh no, like the milk. Or a way would just say maybe it spilled. So if you have a child sitting at a table and they knock some milk over, especially if it's their fault, they will just say, oh no, it spilled. Oh no, it spilled. And mom knows or dad knows or the adult there knows, well, the child probably knocked that over. But the child understands the use of the language where it's not my fault if I use the language in this way. So they're not thinking about what the particular transitive or intransitiveness of the grammar is. They're just using it because this is how you use for this situation, this is the vocabulary you use. Okay. Yeah, so Bridget actually just had another good point there. Chefs are always trying to improve their skills, and it's usually because they're interested in that. They like learning more about good cooking, or they want to learn more about meals or whatever. There are always new things to learn, deeper things you could go to. I mean, you could probably take a class in just how to cook with eggs. Just using an egg and maybe 2 or 3 other things. I bet you could make a whole cooking class and series of TV shows or a book. I bet there are. Again, I don't know much about cooking, but if you go to maybe Amazon or a bookstore or whatever, and you look there and you find cooking books just for eggs, I'm sure you could find lots of recipes for that. And you would be astonished, surprised, amazed by how much, wow, look at all these different things you could do with just eggs. Okay, and you could do desserts or regular, maybe savory food. So savory means like chicken and meat and things. I can't even explain it well because I'm not a chef. But when we talk about the sweeter things versus a dinner kind of thing, that's when we're talking about those different kinds of things as a chef. But I'm not a chef, and I know some of that vocabulary to a little degree or a low degree, I guess. But the more important thing is if you're interested in that. And even if you're not, for the language learning example, maybe some people don't care about English, which is fine. But if you care about communicating with other people, and especially if you need English for your life, it's actually very easy to get excited about things like this, especially when you see them in context. So if you watch a YouTube video and just get a list of vocabulary, you're probably not going to feel very excited about that. But if you also see that natives are using these things and you see proof, look at that, these actual natives are describing these things in this way or expressing themselves in this way, then you will feel much more confident and actually be happy that you spent the time to do that. Okay? Let me take a look at chat, but hopefully people are understanding this idea. It's actually a quite simple idea, but I really wanted to make this to remind people that if you're not speaking as well as you'd like, you need to go more into detail with things and actually learn them the same way natives do. All right? So however you do that, whether you're doing that by yourself or you do that with my help in Fluent for Life or whatever, but that's how you should be doing it. So that's the same thing I do in Japanese as well as I'm learning that. I'm always trying to get different examples, and when I think I understand something, I will typically hear a new use of it, and I'm always surprised and very excited when I do because, oh, look at that. I leveled up my ability to use that word, and that improves my conversations. All right, Marciliana from Brazil. Always lots of Brazilians there. Let's see, Armando's. Oh, okay, you got answered that one already. Let's see, I was trying to find out if the program has a discount for people in Africa. What program? You're talking about our programs? Well, we don't really have like a discount for people in particular regions, but we have different programs. So if people are unable to join a more expensive one, we have lower priced ones as well. Let's see. Manipur from India. Hi from Vietnam, says Truck. And Tsubasa, nice to see you there with the depth. Ohio gozaimasu. Diana says hello from Mexico. Your draw is good and funny. Yes, my drawings are not very good. I can actually draw pretty well sometimes, but I'm trying to draw very quickly for these videos. I don't want to sit and draw, like take a long time to draw somebody very nice, because it doesn't really help me teach anything better. All right, who wants some pie? Says Ildar. Yes, bring in some old school references over there. Y'all want some pie? Yes, that's a good idea for our chef cooking example over here. So we have the same thing in Arabic, says Nawfal, and Carolina from Dominican Republic. How much time to learn English per day? Well, how much time do you want to spend per day? I would rather think like the more important question is how you learn rather than the amount of time you spend. Because I could take, let's say I have an hour, so 1 hour to learn, 1 hour, and I have two different ways of learning. If I do the EFL way, the English as a first language way, I could actually make a lot of progress in an hour. I could make a lot of progress in, 5 minutes, depending on the particular lesson I'm getting. But if you're learning English as a second language, typically you could spend an hour and not really feel more fluent if you don't understand anything better. So I could take some flashcards and review these again and again, but did that really help me? Maybe, maybe not. Often people are not really feeling that much more confident after they learn. And so if a lesson does not help you feel more confident by eliminating doubt that you have, then it's probably a waste of time. So the point is more first how to learn, and then I try to spend as much time as I could learning the language, especially if I need that language for my life. Let's see. Lily says, could you save this live? Yep, I will. We always save these lives and people can come back and watch them anytime. Dragon says hello from Morocco. Vanilla said, what's the difference between the perspectives and point of view? And in my opinion. Well, like perspective and point of view, like that as literally talking about like which way you're looking at something, or whether it's like a physical thing or you're thinking about it figuratively, mentally. So I could be thinking like from my point of view, and typically people use this in actually people use this in both ways, but like point of view, like if we're looking at something, so if I'm standing over here and I'm looking this way and you're standing over here and you're looking that way at it, so our point of views or our perspectives are different, and that's typically where we're talking about a particular thing and what we think about it. Now this is similar to an opinion about something, but my opinion is like it's I don't know. I mean, you could use that with like my perspective. I suppose you could say that, but it's typically perspective and point of view are used for a bit more maybe important kinds of things, like a more professional situation, or you're having a more educated conversation. But if you're talking about a movie you just saw, your opinion would be more like the particular thing. You're just kind of sharing your thoughts about it. Another difference between like opinion and perspective is typically a perspective is maybe a more thought out or a deeper or broader way of explaining something. So I might have a perspective on life where like I have different values or different ways of thinking about life, something like that. And I don't really, but like having an opinion about life is just like, what do I think about it? So it's a little bit different. And you could, people again could use these things, like you could have a perspective about something or an opinion about something or a point of view about that thing. But generally, you will find like perspective and point of view are used for a bit more elegant or educated or more professional things, or if you're talking maybe more deeply about a topic. So like, again, my perspective on life rather than my opinion about life, you would typically hear that more. All right, let's see. From China here. Here is Egypt's Mother World. When will you end this live? Whenever it ends. I don't have a specific time. I can't be here forever, though. Let's see. Coke Adi says, have a good one. And Leo says, yesterday I was watching your class about the word gritty. Nice. Did you learn something? Hopefully it made sense. And I can't read the Cyrillic. Is English your first language? Yes, it is. Does it sound like it's not my first language? Hopefully my English is pretty good. I try to practice it every day, Let's see. Wendy, a language enthusiast again. Sorry, I'm late. Hello, I'm from Nagoya, Japan. Yes, it's rainy over there. It's rainy in Nagasaki as well. And Said says, I'm in that program, Fluency for Life, if it has any discount for someone like me in Africa. Yeah, we don't have like particular country-specific discounts. Benji says, from Haiti, George Chan, do you know what bullet climbing means? No. Bullet climbing? No, never heard of that. Is that a video game thing or something else, some new expression? And there are, like, again, lots of words or expressions I wouldn't know, especially some new vocabulary or something that maybe like people from previous generations used, or old English from, a couple hundred years ago, something. Lots of English that I do not know, but I can still speak fluently. All right, Wendy, again, I hear that our rainy season is about to be over. It is raining. Is it raining in Kyushu? Yes, it is. Wait, are you not from? You're in Japan, but you're not Japanese, I'm guessing. Let's see. English grammar and tense is important or not? Well, as I just showed you with this lesson here, of course, grammar is important, and you're basically learning grammar right from when you start hearing the language from your parents or other people, because the grammar and the vocabulary, it's one thing. It's kind of like saying, like, is a color necessary for an object? And it's like, well, if you have like something, it will be some kind of color, or maybe you can make it clear, I guess. But the point is, you can't really separate grammar and vocabulary, and you can't separate pronunciation either. So natives are learning all these things at the same time. The important thing, again, is how are you learning the grammar or vocabulary or pronunciation, whatever. If you're learning English as a first language, you will be understanding grammar like this, where you're hearing these different examples from different people in different situations, and that helps you intuitively understand the grammar so you use it correctly, confidently, and fluently. All right? So if you're not really understanding the grammar because you're studying it like a typical language student, maybe you're trying to follow the rules, but you're not really understanding it in context, then it's going to be much more difficult for you to learn that way. So again, the goal is not to spend a lot of time doing something, it's to just do it well. And the more you understand the language like a native, the better you will become a good speaker, or the better you will speak, I should say. Hopefully that makes sense. So again, whenever people are asking me about how they can solve a particular problem, or if they're asking me questions about learning grammar or vocabulary, it's like, yes, obviously grammar is important, but the important thing is how you learn the grammar, because this is still a grammar lesson. So the child is still understanding the grammar from the parent, but the parent is not explaining the grammar rule. They're just giving an example of the grammar rule. And the more examples you get, the more you understand the thing intuitively, okay? So I could give, often I will give examples like this to my kids, and they just understand the vocabulary. And they understand the grammar and the pronunciation, but it's not because I gave them a textbook or some flashcards or something. I just said, look, let me show you the difference between these two things, or where, they just see this naturally. And so the more you can do this as well, the faster you get fluent. Right. Ben Wong, recently I'm playing Red Dead Redemption on Switch. Yeah, I thought about getting that game, but it seemed like it was I don't know, It takes a lot of time, I guess. Bruno says, hey, Drew, glad to be here. Nice class, by the way. It's my pleasure to see you again, sir. Elder says, the day before I saw the video, the welding instructor showed how to use a penetration method, and it said, bloodied like a stuck pig. It makes my day. Yes, you will learn some interesting things like that, especially if you're learning from natives. Ben Wang says, it's night in Europe, but I feel hungry. I lost my sleep a bit recently. Oh, no, you lost your sleep. Oh, no, you're not getting enough sleep, hopefully. Well, then don't play Red Dead Redemption. Get some sleep instead. Let's see. Afada says, from Chicago, you would say you are a good teacher, but it's my pleasure. Happy to help. I want to go to McDonald's where near my apartment. Enjoy. Bruno again says, do you think we should aim for a C2 level? I think C2 is so academic. Would C1 be any better? I don't know. I can't really tell people what their particular goals are because each person has their own thing for their life. So if you need academic English for your life, then get that academic English. But if you don't, and it doesn't matter, then it's just not that big of a deal. But you might. Again, you might, like as a native, I don't need to go to like college in order to get academic level English. I can just read higher level books, or I can read science fiction or something like that. But again, it just depends on what you need for your life. So I wouldn't waste my time doing something. If you're, let's say we just had the McDonald's example. If you're working at McDonald's, you probably don't need to know like academic English, So it just depends on what your situation is, or even maybe if you're working as an executive in McDonald's, then you would probably need to know that. But again, it depends on your life. Let's see. Wendy says, I'm Japanese, and I think you might recognize me if you remember me. We've met before? Wendy, the language enthusiast. You're a Japanese person named Wendy? Is that your real name? But we've met before? Leo says, actually, I was watching your class and you were speaking a bit fast, and I look up and went back to the video. Very good. Yes, I try to speak a little bit faster in some videos, or at some times in videos, just so I can shake things up a little bit. I can give people a little bit of a challenge. A superb presentation, says food challenge sister. Now this is going to be someone who would appreciate a lesson like this. If you're a food challenge sister, then there you go. Let's see. Anakara says, hi, Drew. All the time that you always live video lessons, what kind of camera are you using? This is an iPhone 8 Plus, I think. So maybe I'm a little bit out of date, but I try to keep my setup very easy for me to do. So I can take the camera. I have just a blue microphone in front of me, nothing fancy. I should probably get a lav mic. I think I have some, but I didn't really like using them. This is just easier, and I don't have anything attached to me. I don't really like the motion of something like that, but maybe the technology has improved. But we'll see. Anyway, it's a very simple setup. Miguel says, could you recommend a book to help me become more fluent in English? You should check my channel and just watch the videos about, I have a video specifically that says these books will get you fluent in English. And what I recommend in that video is lots of things about the same topic, especially children's books. And again, you might think that, well, children's books, I don't need children's books. That's beneath my level. And thinking that way is like the chef example I gave before. Like, well, I know what an onion is, of course. Well, who cares? I mean, anybody can, that's easy to know what an onion is, but do you really know what an onion is? Could you cook an onion very well? And could you cook it in 20 different ways? Could you do the same thing with vocabulary? And so when we get a lot of these examples, I personally enjoy children's books a lot because I'm getting usually lots of varied examples, that naturally varied review. Often children's books, I should have brought some today, but I didn't make that example before. But in that video, you can see those examples. But when we had, in that video, I'm showing you typically a children's book will give you like a grammar point or something, and they will use it again and again. So I gave an example in that video about like, I like it when we do something. So I like it when we try new food. I like it when you read me a story, or I like it when we whatever. So lots of different examples of that. And so children, they're actually getting grammar lessons without realizing it that way, and that's how you should be learning grammar too. So it's important to understand that like grammar is important. I want to reiterate that, to say that again, grammar is important, but how you learn the grammar is even more important. Because if you're trying to study lessons that you don't really like, or it's not really making much sense to you, then you probably will not enjoy that very much. And so, again, the example before about I broke the egg versus the egg broke, it's very clear to people what this means, and now they can start applying that in other situations like, oh no, something spilled, or this thing opened, or that thing closed, or this thing started, or that thing stopped. And you can really understand the grammar that way, even though you might not know if it's transitive or intransitive, because, again, it just doesn't matter if you know those particular terms. But if you're trying to learn with books, and books should be part of the way you learn, but you still need to get lots of examples of how natives actually speak. Because anything where you have text, it's a lot easier to understand than the natural, real way that people communicate that is often not very clear, or sentences are not grammatically correct. And so again, when you hear me speaking in these videos, I'm not speaking the same way I would speak normally, and I'm making an effort to be more understandable. That way you can actually follow particular sentences, and the grammar makes sense, and my speech is clear. I'm not slurring my words or using things that would be a bit more difficult for people to understand. Let's see. Oh no, I got lost again. All right, and Ben Wong, okay, I feel there are always a lot of vocabulary I don't know when I'm watching YouTube, even already reached B1, B2. Yeah, and when people talk about English levels like that, like, it's the same thing for passing tests. So I will actually help lots of people who have good scores on tests, but they still have lots of trouble with native speakers, and that's because, again, like the way people regularly speak is just different from the way most people would get lessons in classes. And so rather than thinking about like a particular level, like I was explaining earlier, think more about the kind of English you want to use and the kinds of speakers you have to encounter in your daily life. So if you work for a company and those people are harder to understand, then it's kind of different from B1 or B2 or whatever. You're actually paying more attention to those particular speakers. So really focus on listening to them, and that will make your life much easier. But yes, there will always be new things to learn and new situations where people are trying to maybe teach you something, or you want to learn something new. And as you go deeper into something, just like becoming a chef, I think there was a series of videos. I don't know if these are still around, but or they're still making them. They're probably still on YouTube. But this was like a beginner and a kind of intermediate person and an expert chef making different kinds of food. So you would take something simple like a hamburger, or like seemingly simple. So you take something that a lot of people might know how to make, but then see how different people would make that, and then try to get the different like examples of that. And you would see, wow, like the expert really knows a lot about how to make a hamburger taste perfect. And again, like looking at the egg example, it's the same kind of thing, where a beginning English learner just learns the word egg, but a fluent native speaker knows 20 different recipes or 20 different ways to cook an egg. All right, so I want you to get to that level where you're actually able to use things without thinking about it. So I feel textbook English is limited whether it's higher or lower level. Yes, and it's always limited, again, because it's text. So text is going to be clear, usually grammatically correct, but it's just different. Even a transcript of a conversation would be better than a textbook for understanding how natives really speak. So even me right now, I'm trying my best to speak clearly, to speak in grammatically correct sentences, you know, the kinds of things you would expect from a lesson like this, but it's a little bit better than just reading it in a textbook. So if I had to take my time and think and write down everything I wanted to say, it would look much different than the way I'm saying it right now. Let's see. Did I skip anybody here? Oh, okay, I got those right. Dario says, I put you always to hear as a background music while I work. Well, glad to hear it. What do you do? All right, hopefully you should be able to learn a little bit. Try to learn maybe 1 or 2 new things each day. Don't put a lot of pressure on yourself, but yeah, it's good to keep something good in English in the background. I think people actually do enjoy having these longer videos where they can listen to something. You can put it on without needing to change anything. But I'm glad some people are enjoying that. Benoit again, what is the meaning of laid back? It means someone having a break. Well, laid back, typically it's talking about a person's personality. So the idea of laid back, we usually, as I often teach, we have a physical like an origin of something you can see. So a person who's in a chair that's reclining, they are laying, like kind of laid back like that. And then you can take that feeling of how you are sitting in a chair like that and apply it to a person's personality. So you can think, wow, he's a very relaxed person in general. Like people don't, maybe something happens in her life or his life and they don't really feel very worried about things. They're very relaxed about things. They're very laid back. So it would mean talking about a person's personality in that way. Or you could also talk about an event or something rather than as opposed to a company board meeting where people are, maybe they're wearing suits and they're sitting around a table and they're having a very professional conversation. You could also have a company meeting that's very laid back. So it's more relaxed. Maybe people are sitting around a campfire instead. So it's like a camping trip and it's just a more relaxed feeling and people maybe feel more comfortable talking about things. So it's more relaxed, more laid back, all right? So remember, when you're learning vocabulary, often we learn things at a kind of higher level. So a friend of mine says, oh, like you should meet this person, he's very laid back. And if you only hear that, it's not really clear what laid back means. So you have to go and get these examples of like, all right, well, what does that mean? But again, this is like the way we teach in Fluent for Life to really help you understand how the vocabulary works. So whenever you're trying to think about that, look for some kind of physical example, and it's often easier to find these as you get many examples of whatever that vocabulary is. So if you learn a new word, try to get, I forget who that was that mentioned that before about getting different examples of vocabulary, but everybody should be doing this, and it's what I'm talking about with this chef example as well. And let's see, Wendy again. No, Wendy is not my real name, and we've never met either. We communicated through email several times back in around 2011 when I was one of your students. Oh, well, look at that. Well, hopefully you're speaking much better now, and hopefully, wow, it's good to see you then. So are you still learning or teaching? Let me know what you're doing. DeTreglin says, morning, sir. I always watch your live, but I do not always leave a comment. I like the way you explain something. It's very clear. Thanks for teaching us. It's my pleasure. Yep, you don't have to comment. I'm here, and I just make these videos. People can join them live or just watch them later. Benoit again, sometimes I forget the word temporary or can't remember the meaning clearly. Yeah, and often this will happen. Even natives have this happen to them. But as I explained in my, Monday's video, I think, where I was talking about moving like water, natives are able to use a different thing. So if maybe I forget a word, and that does happen to natives. So if I am thinking about something, but I forget that word, okay, maybe I need to switch to something else, and I'm able to do that very easily because, just like the chef example up here, if I know that thing very well, if I know 10 different ways to cook eggs, then it doesn't matter if I can't cook one way, I just switch to something else. It's very easy. But it's because I've built up that knowledge, I understand those things very well. Let's see, Darryl says, let him cook. There you go. Benoit, I feel Burger King has bigger burgers than McDonald's. Yeah, I don't know if that's true or not, and I guess it depends on the burger. But I thought I saw an image that was comparing McDonald's burgers now to them, I don't know, 20 years ago or something, and I think the burgers have gotten smaller. So I don't know for sure, but they do have, like, I don't know, like McDonald's. I haven't been to Burger King in many years. We don't have a Burger King around here. But I thought the Whopper was larger than a Big Mac. I think it is. I don't know for sure. I've never seen them side by side, so I don't know. Maybe I'll do a video lesson about comparing burger. I'm sure somebody has done that already. Hip, nice to see you there. How can I think about other language without translating when I speak with a foreign person? Often I try to translate word by word from English to Vietnamese when I hear native people speak. Yes, and the reason you do that is because you learned English probably for many years in school as a second language. So if you learn English through translations, you will translate when you speak. So the solution to this is to not learn English through translations. It's actually to learn English as a first language. And so that's what we're talking about here. I gave that example. If you just joined us, go back and watch earlier in the video. But I just gave an example about how a mother might be teaching her kids something about cooking, but she's also giving them a very good language lesson. And really everything, the language is everywhere. And it's easy to get lots of examples of it if you're paying attention and you think, oh, like that's a new way of using something, or now I understand what that grammar really means, rather than trying to learn it through textbooks or through translations. So the first step is to learn everything in English. And then what you're trying to do when you learn is to eliminate any doubt you have about that thing. So if you're still translating, it means you're not really confident about the meaning of something in English. But when you understand something in English, then it's easy for you to learn. All right, so learn more about this. If you don't know already, you can click on the link in the description below this video to learn about Fluent for Life. Even if you don't join the program, it will help you understand how you should be learning. All right, Leo again says, I'm doing a degree in English. I'm the 6th semester, but they only teach linguistic philosophy. Well, that sounds interesting. Do you tend to use simple or similar words when talking to us all the time? I do. Usually what I do with lessons is I will speak mostly simpler or easier language. And then if I'm teaching something, you will get some more advanced vocabulary or some maybe more native natural vocabulary. How I'm speaking now is it's perfectly fine English. There's nothing bad about that. I'm just maybe speaking a little bit slower. I'm also trying not to give as many idioms or phrasal verbs or movie references, that kind of thing, that I would if I'm speaking with like a person I know. And I think I mentioned this in Monday's video also, but typically communication is about understanding the person you're speaking with. So we call that like speaking that person's language. And often you will hear this used like, oh, now you're speaking my language. Like you're communicating in the way I understand something very well. So if I know someone came from New York City and I know things about New York, I can use that in the conversation and have a better conversation with that person. So it's not just about the language, it's about making assumptions or connecting with that person based on what you know about them. All right, it's like the same thing for stand-up comedy. So if you're like trying to tell a joke to someone and that joke relies on that person understanding certain things, then you shouldn't tell that joke if that person doesn't know that information. So, and this is like, it becomes more an inside joke. So an inside joke is when I would tell something, if I have a group of people around me and I say something that only maybe somebody else would understand, but most other people would not get that. That's an inside joke. So I'm not thinking about the actual group and trying to say something funny that the whole group would understand. All right. But typically when we're communicating with people, we're trying to think about ways in which we can really connect with that person or those people. And so like think about more, what's the best way to put that? Know the audience. That's the best advice I would give about that. All right, let's see here. And Lou says, okay, I answered that one already. Philosophical linguistics. I see. I used ChatGPT. It said you B1, B2 level. It correct or not? I don't know. Well, based on the grammar of your comment there, I would say no, but maybe. I don't know. And again, like if you're able to read or write things, that's a different level. And ChatGPT would be not really able to tell you what your level would be, just like a computer being able to do that. And I would find someone that actually is very good at like knowing those particular levels and they're able to check that kind of thing. ChatGPT might be able to help you, but another thing to remember about language levels, just like vocabulary, is that you can know some things but not others. So you can be fluent in some vocabulary, but not be fluent in other things. Let's see. So when again, surprisingly, even after more than 10 years, so you would, in this case, you would say surprisingly after more than 10 years, or you would just say surprisingly 10 years later or more than 10 years later. You wouldn't use both though. I'm still practicing speaking because I've always been lazy. This year I'm determined and practicing daily on my channel. I really enjoy your live. Oh, glad to hear it. You mean like you're speaking in order to improve your speech? Is that what you're talking about? Remember, as I always say, speaking is great if you can do it, but again, knowing the language is the most important thing, because if you really remove the doubt you have about being able to speak, then you will speak much more confidently and fluently. So you will know the difference between like using something like after more than 10 years or 10 years later. So you would pick one of those and you would know the difference and you would know to use that correctly or not. So I would spend more time really trying to know the language. If you are trying to speak though, that's nice. Do you try to use more? Oh, okay, I answered that. Maybe I didn't. Or two people are answering me this. Because of the large number of beginners who is watching your videos. Well, we get. It's not usually beginners who find my content because it's all in English, and if you don't already understand something, you probably would not watch it. So, I mean, and also remember, you will have people that can understand a lot, but they still don't speak very well. All right, so it's just a typical thing. So people might be, again, you can have good listening ability, but not good speaking ability, because again, as I continue to repeat, as I'm mentioning over and over again, there are different levels of understanding. And so if you start with just the kind of exposure or awareness level of something, but you don't really get to that ownership level, that's where a lot of people are. But in general, I'm trying to make sure more people can understand me, but we do have a wide range of people. Actually, people who actually understand quite a bit, and even I can make some jokes sometimes, and people will understand those. They will get those things. Ben Wong again, I feel my mother tongue try to make me speak Chinese word. When I speak English, my mother tongue try to interrupt. Yes, so the same advice I gave to someone else asking about that. I think that was that Hip, I think from Vietnam, I'm guessing. Spend less time thinking in English, less time thinking and translating in your native language and more time thinking in English and getting more native example. So it's more like you kind of turn away from Chinese or whatever your native language is and focus on getting native English examples of things. And it's often easier to do this with new information. So if I start learning about, I don't know, like when I came to Japan and started learning about Japanese gardening, I'm learning all these things that I didn't even have a name for in English. So it could be names of flowers or gardening things that are specific to Japan, because we just don't have that in the United States. So all of that became like a first language for me. All right. Now you're kind of doing that just to prove that you can learn a new language as a first language rather than as a second language through your native language, because often you don't have that ability when you're, doing something new. I couldn't really learn Japanese gardening in English, especially when I came to Japan. There weren't a lot of resources for that anyway. But all the particular things I'm learning, I'm still learning that all in Japanese. So if you're trying to not think in your native language, then spend more time learning things in English. Okay. Let's see. Okay, you've already answered my question. Thanks. All right. Again, I appreciate the correction. I'll try to listen more. Yes. And remember, I'll refine that comment a little bit. The point is not really to listen a lot. It's just to understand better and eliminate the doubt. So as another example I give often is if I'm trying to explain to someone what like a color is. So let's say I hold up a different marker over here, but I don't show you what the color is. So there's a marker hiding behind my hand right here, and I'm trying to describe what it is. It's much more difficult than just showing you what the marker is and say, oh, look, like blue, So if I tell you that and I'm going to show you that with something else like red, black, Oh, look, black. We've got a black marker here and a black shirt. So as you hear those, you think, okay, now I get it. And it's much easier. It's not about listening to what I'm saying. It's just, can I be understandable? Can you understand making that connection between the sounds of the language and the situation, whatever it is I'm talking about? So yes, listening is important, but it's just one way that you would be able to understand a language better. So another way you would see something or try to write something down, try to think about it in a different way, try to taste something or feel it. So I can tell the difference between something is hard, like hard versus soft, if I just touch that thing. It's much faster and easier than someone trying to explain me what hard means. Imagine trying to explain like hardness to something. Like hard, what does that mean? But if I just touch something, it's like, okay, this is a hard thing and this other thing is soft. Now I get it. All right, so keep that in mind. The goal is the elimination of doubt, not just to like learn through listening or whatever. I understand your speech more clearly. What do you think about that? I understand your speech more clearly. More clearly than what? Batter says, as a non-native speaker, is speaking formal English better than informal? It depends on the situation. Like some people, maybe they need, professional English for their life. Other people need regular informal English or casual communication. It just depends on what you're interested in. Maybe you don't speak with anybody, but you enjoy watching different kinds of TV shows. So if you watch a higher level, more like academic show or like a law, like a law TV program or something like that, it's much different than watching a cartoon for kids. All right, so just keep that in mind, and you don't need to ask a teacher like, what should I learn? It's just what do you need for your life? What is your life situation? Okay, so when people ask me what English they need, I ask them, you tell me. Like, what do you need? What do you need for your life? And then it's much easier to talk about how you can achieve fluency. Answer that one here. Kevin again. Hi, I've been studying in Duolingo for 4 years. 4 years, wow. And it surely did give me a good experience in the overall practice lessons that you daily have to complete. Sir, is this text correct? What can I improve? I don't understand. I don't understand what so I've been studying in Duolingo for 4 years. And it surely did give me a good experience in the overall practice lessons that you daily have to complete. I don't know what that means. Like what daily lessons? You mean Duolingo helped you get good at Duolingo? Is that what you mean? Like practice lessons that they have, or whatever? And remember, something like Duolingo, it's going to be different than how natives actually speak. So it will help you get to a certain level, but to get beyond that, you really need to get real examples of natives. Thank you for the great advice. This is Wendy. It's my pleasure. Odaba says Obada, for non-native speaker, how long does a person take to sit for the IELTS exam? I have no idea. I don't do the IELTS exam or focus on that, so I would look for people who do. Being ready for the exam. Yeah, I guess it depends on where you are now and when the test is. So I don't know. It depends on the person, and also I'm not the expert about taking particular tests, so I would look for people who do that. Look for people who can help you with a particular test. What we do is help people speak fluent English confidently, which obviously helps you on a test like that. But if you need to do certain things to pass a particular test, then find specific information about that. Let's see. And Kevin again, sorry, geez, I wasn't being exactly concrete. Based on your comments, I would say like this is a good example of someone who knows a lot of English, but you're not really putting it together well. So I like in your spoken communication is probably not, or probably less good, I would imagine. But think about that, whatever your goals are. If you have to speak, then I would spend more time watching natives speak, and that way it will actually show you the same way children are learning the language, like the example I gave before about the eggs. So again, trying to think about this more like a chef. You probably don't know the language as well as you think you do. You should spend more time focusing on fewer things, really understand those well, and it's much easier to take things that you understand well and then apply that in other situations or with other vocabulary. I've been trying to watch English about police, but 50 or 60% of the words used, I have never seen those words. Yeah, so I would watch. I mean, you can even start with something very simple like Paw Patrol. So Paw Patrol, like my kids watch this, PAW. So Paw Patrol it's like little dogs that help people in their community. It's a fun show, but they start using that kind of vocabulary where like that police would use about whatever. And so again, like I know you're doing like a much higher level, higher level learning in school or whatever. But the whole point of this video is to remind people that even if you are a graduate level student, that you like respect the ingredients and that you could always learn more, and you should probably spend more time focusing on some few basic things, and I promise that will help you understand more complicated things, and you will feel more confident about that. So don't feel bad or that you're wasting your time if you watch an episode of Paw Patrol. I bet you would probably find some vocabulary in there that you're like, oh, look, like I didn't know that, or it's interesting that they use that vocabulary this way. So like keep that in mind. But don't feel bad about that. So I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad or say like, I don't watch that. Like I watch that. I watch kids shows or read books for kids because I always find some new Japanese in there that's surprising or interesting to me, and it's taught in a way that makes it easy because you've got pictures that actually show you what's happening. So the same way a children's television show would help you understand something as well. So if I try to watch Japanese news, it's going to be more difficult for me because they will use some things I will know because they use them all the time. It's like Keisatsu ni yorimasu to, like it's like according to police or whatever, that same kind of thing, those same expressions that are used, but again, there will be other things that are used, and often in kids programming or kids books, you're taking those things and trying to teach those to kids as well. So don't feel bad about doing that. I know it sounds funny to watch Paw Patrol or something, but but I recommend it because I do it myself and it helps me improve, and it should help other people as well. No reason why I wouldn't. Kevin again, yes, that's the main focus for me. Now on trying to find content creators like you that spend a period of time explaining a certain topic or a bigger range. A bro couldn't finish his sentence. Oh no, what's going on? You're okay. You're okay. Don't feel bad. You can find something like me, but usually what I recommend is having a teacher, and then if I'm able to help you understand something, then that's the first step. That's great. That's like really the hardest part. The next step after that is to get lots of examples of that thing. But if you don't understand, like if you watch 10 different teachers explain something and none of them are really making something clear for you, keep going until you find someone who does. If that's not me, I understand, but find someone who does for your situation. And then look for lots of examples of that vocabulary. And remember, like maybe I explain one thing well and you understand it easily, but I say something else and you're like, I don't quite get it or whatever. Get more examples. But the first step is really making sure you're understanding something very well, and you will feel much more confident about that. Also, one more note about kids' TV shows, less so for kids' books, but more for kids' TV shows and movies. They do put in jokes and vocabulary for parents that often little kids don't know. But they put that in there so parents who are watching it can understand that and kind of have some fun too. So remember, there is content for adults in even kids' animation or kids' books. Armando says, is it possible to have a good conversation in English even using translation from native language? I guess you could. I mean, it's like anything's possible, but it's probably less, it would be slow, I guess, and probably not communicate exactly what you want to say, because often translating things, like it won't express exactly what you want to say. Unfortunately, we're still not there yet. Kevin, again, I think that my problem is that I overcomplicate everything. Well, keep it simple then, very easy. Most English teacher on YouTube is bored. Oh, you mean boring? Boring. So in that case, like if you're talking about them, you would be bored by them. So they are boring and you are bored by them. When again, I just like to listen to you speak Japanese from time to time. Your Japanese sounds charming. Charming, ne. Yes, usually, I don't spend much time speaking Japanese in lessons like this because most of the people watching do not understand Japanese, but I will use some occasionally, especially my charming na Nihongo ne. Ben Wong says, I will feel tired to watch it. Yeah. So like this, when parents are teaching things to their kids, that is a language lesson. They don't think about it that way, but it is a language lesson. And so you can also watch kids and parents doing things like my kids will watch like how-to videos about drawing. So like art things, and like there's a one, I think it's called, what's it called? It's like Art for Kids Hub or something. I forget the name of it, but they enjoy those videos. It's often a dad or the host or the artist guy. I guess he's an artist or something, I guess. And so usually he's drawing something with one of his kids. And that's a really great way to learn because, you know, he says something and then the child says something also, and then he's teaching them and, you know, like they're actually having it's an interesting conversation, and you can learn a lot of language at the same time. And again, the visual nature of something when you're seeing somebody do it, like draw a line like this, like, oh, look at that, draw a line. Or if I'm cooking, like put in 2 scoops of this thing, and you see like 1 scoop and 1 more scoop. And so this is how natives are learning the language, like do the same thing. I'm going to get like that, but that's basically that's the idea. Keep it simple. Do what natives do if you want to speak like natives. All right. Kevin says you are very understandable. Yes, that's the point. And Danny says finally I got a live from Drew. YouTube hasn't been sending your videos to my timeline lately. Yes, I don't know why that is. I don't know why YouTube will recommend or not recommend or whatever, even to my own subscribers, but I don't know. If you find out, let me know. I'm creating my own phrase about a specific topic, and I'm studying them. Do you think it's a good idea? When you say creating your own phrases, what do you mean by that? Like you're just creating phrases by yourself? Hopefully they are correct English, but assuming they are, you can certainly do that. And but again, I can understand very well, but when it comes to speaking, I'm having difficulties in regards of connecting the sentences while thinking in my head with my native language. I have tried a lot to fix it. Yes, I have, like, if you go to my channel and click on the tab for live videos and then one for the click on popular, you'll see one of those videos that has a little chain on the bottom of it, like a chain picture or a chain image or whatever I drew. But that's talking about how to continue speaking, and it's been, again, a popular video, but it solves that problem. Really, all of the videos I'm making, they teach the same basic lesson, that if you learn English as a first language, you will solve those problems. But the idea is really to destroy the doubt that stops you from speaking. That's when you naturally become a more confident speaker. Leo says, you should be kidding us. And Anish says, hi. And Ariel says, I don't have fear anymore to make mistakes when I am speaking English. Glad to hear it. Oh, no, I'm late, says Anish. It's okay. You're never late because these just get saved on YouTube and you can watch them anytime. And Kevin, again, I think the fact that people don't get notified is because the amount of people they have subscribed to, maybe just a few pop out in the notifications. It's an assumption. Yes, that's possible. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, my channel is interesting like that because I don't get like a lot of people. For the number of people who are subscribed, I don't get many views. And so it's probably me not being very good at what I do, I guess. I don't know. Like maybe I'm like something is, I don't know. I wish I knew what that was, but it's interesting. Like I do have a good group of people who follows me, and those people are improving, which I like to see. I wish more people could find me, especially the people who are subscribed to my channel, because I will often hear from people that they could not get notified. But yep, just check the channel and do what you can. Cam says, hello, nice to see you there. All right, Marie Jean Felix says, what does insight mean? Typically, it's like a discovery or noticing of something. I actually have a program called The Insight, and it's just like thinking about something in a different way. So usually if you have an interesting way of seeing something or an idea comes to you, it's an insight. You can think about like sight, like on the inside of your head, like it's an idea that comes to you. All right, good morning, sir, says Lucky. And Kevin again, you are great at this. Let's supposedly say that is mere luck, whether the notification appears or doesn't. I don't know. I always want to take responsibility though. So it's my channel, and if it's not getting good views, then I'm probably doing something wrong, but who knows? But it's interesting. Yeah, I don't really know what, what to do about it because like logically, I mean, that one reason that maybe people aren't notified or that I have fewer views on the channel is because I spend more time trying to help people understand the language so they get fluent, when a lot of the popular content is just giving people more vocabulary. So even though they probably won't remember it or use it fluently, you know, that's the kind of natural thing people are interested in. And that's another reason like people continue to learn new things. So people will continue to give them new content, even though they don't really become fluent in that content. But I'm really here for the people who want to break that cycle. So of just learning new words, but not really feeling more confident in them. For me, that's really frustrating. I think that's why I do it. So me actually trying to become a fluent speaker of a second language, it's frustrating for me when I learn a word and then forget it. So I want to learn something, get lots of good examples, really understand something well, start using it in my conversations, and then I can feel more confident about moving on to something else. Hopefully that makes sense. But that's why I do what I do, and it looks like we're at the end of the line here. But if you have enjoyed this, if you are the kind of person who would like help with this, you can click on the links in the description to learn more about Frederick as well as Fluent for Life. But again, the point is to help you end the doubts and any kind of fears or worries you have about the language, because that's really the thing that's stopping people from speaking. It's not where you live or even how much you know or how old you are. It's just if you're in a conversation but you don't feel like you can remember things, or you feel nervous if the pronunciation or the grammar or the vocabulary or whatever is not correct, then you won't speak. That's the real reason. That doubt is the actual thing that stops people from speaking. So if you can clear the doubt away, if you destroy the doubt, the confidence will naturally take its place and help you communicate. All right, we will say bye-bye. Last kind of comments over here. Oh, Canaro, look at that. Just at the end, I believe people who, let's see, write without mistakes have more trouble with their speaking. That's possible. Claudia says, thank you, you are amazing. It's my pleasure. If you know other people who would enjoy the videos, do click the like button. It supports the channel. You'll notice we don't have advertising on our channel either. I want to get people right into the content so you can say, hey, come watch this guy. He can actually help you improve. Thank you for your support, says Kevin. And Danny says, your lessons made me a better teacher here in Brazil. Oh, glad to hear it. Awesome. Yeah, we actually have quite a few teachers that follow us and join our programs. And Teo says, thanks for all this high quality content. Well, it's my pleasure. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.